This is the Dynasty Roundtable podcast, and tonight, I have to be honest, a little blindsided by the news that was broken to me. I have not been paying attention to Twitter. I have been putting my son to bed, and then I get down here. Adam hops on, Matt Babbage hops on and tells me, I was going to put Rashee Rice in the show sheet. And then all of a sudden my phone blows up and I'm like, what's going on here? And I have it right here and we're just going to get right into it. I don't think we should mess around because I know you guys have some thoughts. So I want to get to those right away. According to Adam Schefter, an hour ago on Twitter, 1 week before being ordered to serve 30 days in jail, Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice underwent a cleanup surgery on his right knee to remove loose debris and is now expected to sideline him 2 months. And he also, according to Ari on Twitter, I can never pronounce this guy. It's the My Sports Update guy. Rashee Rice violated his probation after testing positive for marijuana, has been ordered to serve 30 days in jail. So I'll throw it to our guest first, and if you aren't aware of this guy, he is Adam or ATM from South Harmon, one of the crew over there. And if you aren't subscribed to South Harmon, go do that right now. But Adam, what are your thoughts here? Because you were telling me before the show you had some thoughts about Rashee Rice. What are you thinking here?
I mean, I think one thing that always happens in Dynasty, anytime there's a negative player cycle news about this, right, you have potentially buying and selling opportunities, right? So I think those are going to emerge. I'll say the one thing about this that I think you got to keep in the back of your mind, even if you think there's a buying opportunity here. I think I'd still probably lean on, if there's panic, to buy a player of this talent attached to an offense like this. But I'll say the thing that has always kind of been in the back of my mind is, okay, this is a guy that's really talented, but that the Chiefs clearly have a ton of trust in, and they use in a high capacity, right? A lot of touches are kind of almost manufactured for him. Not saying that he can't get open, but like that trust has been there regardless of the situation. And at a certain point, right, it's kind of sad, but you've seen this. Josh Gordon would be, the Cleveland, and probably the biggest glaring example of whether you think he should have been smoking or not, marijuana, right? At a certain point, you've got to get out of your own way. And if you continue to be the person that's getting in your own way, you start to burn the trust of other people. And so that would be the one thing I will tell you from a zoomed out lens of this, seeing this in sports, being someone that played college basketball. Like you've seen talented players do dumb things when they're young. And I'm not saying that he still can't turn his self around, but it's just when you start seeing things where it's like, why are you doing this? Why is this even a problem? At a certain point, you've had so many run-ins, like all you should be worried about and focused on is football, and all the other things need to go to the side. So I don't know why and what's causing him to do that, but at a certain point, will he continue to just keep getting in his own way? And has he gotten in the way of himself and his opportunities that you are used to seeing for the Kansas City Chiefs?
Babish, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think that's well put. And I mean, we've seen, Josh Gordon had his issues, but he came back, had second chances. Antonio Brown was an absolute nutcase. And he was, staying at Tom Brady's house. Because at the end of the day, a guy like Tom Brady, a guy like Patrick Mahomes, they're competitors. And if Patty's got to move Rashee Rice into his house to figure out how to get his act together, because if there's one thing Mahomes knows, we were talking about how, backstage, how there's not really a lot behind Rashee Rice. He is a skeleton key to their offense right now and getting that going. And they look like two different passing offenses with him in and out of the lineup. He's going to get another legally, I'm not super worried. I think, I'm kind of team nothing ever really happens here. We get this big news. We think this player is going to get screwed and ends up, nothing really happens. They play, or, Quinshon Judkins for a while, like people were saying, like he may never play in the NFL. These things continue to happen. So legally, I'm not as worried. Like Adam said, it's you don't want to see this happen, and he becomes more and more of a risk the more he gets into these situations. I'm nervous about the cleanup procedure on his knee. So 1 week ago, he gets a cleanup procedure. Now, arthroscopic cleanup procedure, not a lot done, not a lot of, tissues, muscle atrophy that's going to come from that. It's not that big of a procedure. But you're telling me that he has to, 1 week after getting a knee procedure, he has to go to jail for 30 days. I don't know what the timeline is as to when he has to go and start serving. I imagine with OTAs, mini camps, preseason, he's going to be doing that as soon as he possibly can. So not only is he going to not be on the practice field, he's going to be recovering from a knee procedure and sitting in jail for 30 days.
Yeah, I don't even know what the legal proceedings are on like rehab. Rehab is something, how you're dealing with that, right? Is a big thing. It's huge for how you recover. I'm not saying it's going to be extremely detrimental, but I don't know what the procedure is as how much he can do that and having people like that around.
That's more concerning for me because, I mean, if he's going to be out there and then tweaks his knee in week, maybe he has to serve a 2-game suspension, tweaks his knee in week 3 and is, never really fully healthy all year because he couldn't, to quote Stephen A. Smith, stay off the weed. It's incredible. Like, I know everyone has their own thoughts on marijuana, but like, you just had to run him with the law. You're on probation. It's not like you're this clean act. You got to stay. You got to stay clean as a whistle to get this behind you, and it's upsetting that he made that decision.
I think you said it. I think both of you touched on it. In a vacuum, this is on the surface. I don't know if this is a big deal. It's a big deal because of the player's past, right? Weed on the surface is not a big deal. The fact that you have to serve 30 days in jail because of it is a big deal, right? On top of the uncertainty now with this knee procedure. So it's just another thing that's leaped on top of the Rashee Rice, uncertainty that we had about him anyway, heading into this season.
Yeah, one thing I want to add here too to think about, right? A lot of what I'll say is I don't know all the circumstances, situations. So I won't try to pretend I do. But what I do see and gather is that this isn't someone trying to clean his act up and trying to this is someone that's continuing to be reckless. If you think about this from just a practical standpoint, right? I would be willing to bet my house and things that aren't really normal to do. That wasn't the first time he's happened to smoke weed during probation. And then this is a guy that's literally living during probation as if like on every single day, probably violating and doing things that are going to potentially get him into problems. So that's, I think let me give you that aspect to think about. It's not like he just kind of screwed up. This is a guy that's going through the motions of living life in a way in which is going to be detrimental to himself on a daily basis, probably.
And you know what makes it worse, in my opinion, is that it's the fact that he plays for the Chiefs. It's not like, with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, you would think that there's some structure there. And even with a good organization that's won Super Bowls, hell, he won a Super Bowl with them. And then after they win the Super Bowl, he's out, street racing or whatever. Like the fact that he's in this situation, and the Chiefs, they didn't add anybody in free agency or the draft at wide receiver. So they were clearly betting on him to get his act together. And if he can't start the season, their top wide receiver is going to be Xavier Worthy and Tyquan Thornton and Jalen Royals, and there's not much behind him right now. It's just I think that makes it worse. Yeah,
he's making money that with his decisions could be blown really quickly. So like it's also incredible to me of like, not only do you clearly not prioritize this stuff over football or football over this other stuff, but you're talking about generational money for your family and all these things that are on the line here for your second contract. If you're going to at least be Brandon Ayuk, cash in on that big contract and then say, I'm just going to go drive my car, and post on Instagram for an entire season. It's just, it's crazy, but hopefully this is a learning point and he finally, gets his shit together.
Well, here's my last thoughts on the matter again. Like, I'll say, we'll pivoting into Dynasty in a second, but this is a guy. Right, I have no issue, honestly, for myself personally, if you're smoking marijuana. But what you've done in the past should be a part of now how you're moving forward. This guy's on probation for 5 years, guys. He just got 5 years of probation. So now, if you wanted to get off, let's say early on probation, right? Good behavior will get you. You're literally right now making it harder in every aspect of life. You just talked about the contract. You talked about the team trust. And basically, here's the truth. In life, are you willing to make sacrifices for what you want to get out of life? And I just hate to see him squander what he has in front of him as far as opportunity, talent, everything. So we'll see what that goes. I will say for Dynasty buying, though, I can't really can I tell you, I can't really give you a true answer, because I would definitely be willing to buy, but I don't really it's so new, we don't have real trades to go look at, right?
Mm-hmm.
At a certain price point for me, almost every player can become a buy or sell. That being said, I mean, it depends how rich we are at right now. What would you guys, if you were buying Rashee Rice, what would you be willing to pay? What would you be trying to get done right now?
Well, I just pulled up Keep Trade Cut, and he's fallen from, I can't remember if he was 16 or 17, but he's fallen to wide receiver 21 right now. And that's right after news break. So I suggest a couple more spots are coming.
Well, yeah, we're like basically watching the fall, and when we're reporting, we don't know what it's going to settle in at, right? But there's panic for sure. There's always been panic and movement around him.
He's right above Marvin Harrison Jr., and I'll make that flip any day of the week.
You really?
I don't really believe in Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think he's the best. He's not the best pass catcher in his room with Trey McBride, and he's not the best receiver in his room, I don't think. And clearly he doesn't have. Clearly Brissett favors Michael Wilson, so I think he's got some real competition for himself.
Yeah,
that's quite true.
I would love to see some trades that go down in the next week, like you're talking about, Adam. It's hard to give an answer right now, but if I'm a win now team and I want a dependable asset, and really there's no rush at all to go do anything right now. Like, sure, his value is going to drop, but it's really already dropped in the minds of people. Like, Keep Trade Cut's going to catch up to that. But if I could get a dependable, or what I believe to be a dependable wide receiver that's going to help me win now, like if I'm concerned about that, right? If I just
you're concerned, I'm worried that he's going to miss point loss, right?
Exactly. Like if I could swap him for AJ Brown or something like that, or if I could swap him for, I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a little trickier, but Devonta Smith, he's ranked right next to Devonta Smith. Like somebody like that, if I need a running back, like a win now running back, Saquon Barkley's like in that range there. Like these are trades I think you can make because they're older players, and like depending on where the other team is at and whether they're a rebuilding team, contending team, whatever it might be, but I like if I am depending on Rashee Rice to fill on one of my wide receiver spots, I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of nervous right now, but there's a lot of time before kickoff, so I wouldn't panic sell. Like I wouldn't rush into anything because this is a developing story, but I think those are some names that I think at least would be fair and that I would consider. I think AJ Brown sticks out like a sore thumb to me because he's going to be in a great situation with a young quarterback who had a good year last year. So yeah, what do you think, Adam? Is that do you think that's right online or
no? I mean, I think there's you made a lot of really valid points, and both of you did. I think what I will say with Marv is that from a just dynasty lens first, and then like his player and production. One thing that's happened for him and Rome, although I think we actually saw more of it from Rome, frankly. On the field, but those guys both right now are like going into year 3 still as a projection. There is the volatility is, I don't think some people really necessarily quite grasp how quick we're here, right? If Marv goes out and shows out, he still has room to grow. But if you don't see it in year 3, that's when you'll see this like projection holding up their value. Where let's see. Rome right now is wide receiver 16, and I'd imagine Marv's not too far behind. Marv is wide receiver 22, right? So, but that has tremendous fall. So I like their dynasty value. I like having those players to trade because they're kind of flexible. You just said how it's troubling. So I might make that pivot if I felt like it made me in a better position to trade again. But I'll say one thing you mentioned about there's no rush. If you're in selling Rashee, I think now is unless you're getting true production, like you said, AJ Brown back, probably a bad time to sell Rashee. Now, the only thing to rush potentially on is if you can sense panic in the street on Rashee Rice and it's like really freak out panic level, someone else could get a trade done before you do. So if I was buying and I sense that from like a trade negotiation standpoint, that would be where I would buy Rashee Rice if I can sense and smell. Like if the owners had Rashee before, and we've seen this before where he panics, and he's really panicked right now, that would be where I would try to pounce and try to buy because there might be a real buying opportunity. I think if I'm looking at my team, the ultimate deciding factor will be this. If I'm looking at my team and Rashee's like my wide receiver 1 and I don't have a lot of depth around it, maybe I'm a little more concerned or wanting to pivot down a little bit. If I'm looking at if I have a really deep squad, Rashee's my wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, I might be a little bit more tolerant in taking the risk. Like if it blows up, I know I'm not like going to be completely SOL here. So I'm willing to take that upside swing of we've seen Rashee Rice when he's on the field be a top 5 type player, which can win you leagues. So I would say it probably depends a little on my team situation. If I'm really how much I want to mitigate my risk, I guess I should say.
I think that's a good place to end it. Let us know what you think in the comments. Yeah, it's a developing situation, but this broke right before or about an hour before we sat down to record. So again, let us know what you think in the comments, and we're going to jump into our topic this evening, which is players you should be targeting in trades right now. We'll discuss it from a bunch of different angles, well, at least 2. Whether you're a rebuilding team or a contending team, that'll be a part of the conversation for sure. But this is more in general players that we think their values are going to go up. And I'm going to shoot it right to you, Adam, to pick one of the players. I don't want to put you on the spot right away, but I guess I'm going to.
Please do.
Which player do you want to start with?
Yeah, listen, I guess I'll get out my soapbox, with Rashee continuing to just do the same things over and over because I'm about to do that with Kyle Pitts here. But let me say why. I've been burned by Kyle Pitts and my love and fandom of him after his rookie season, hitting 1,000 yards. And the idea there with his dynasty value was like he's going to be this unicorn, right? His production is going to just be different than everybody else, and you can bank on that for all these years. But it cost you an arm and a leg, and it hurt me a lot. I will say now what's crazy to me, at the tight end position, the way I approach it and think about it is it's either the have or have. Like I either have one or I don't. That's kind of the way I like to play and think about what I want to invest on that position. So if you want to have Trey McBride and Brock Bowers, and there's a tight end premium, let's say of like 1.5, 1.75 in that range at least, I can get behind it. Like because those are still difference makers, like for wins over replacement. The thing about Kyle Pitts is his value dynasty-wise, based on what we saw last year, to me is a little puzzling. Like, I get that you don't want to go up a ton, but this is a guy that, like, in the game that he went off versus Tampa Bay, like, what we saw there is the highest upside of any tight end at the game, right? Like, so if I'm able to get a player that has that type of upside, even if it is inconsistent, in round 7 or later in a startup, or the tight end outside the top 5, he's not even he's pretty consistently in rankings outside of the top 5, right? So to me, Kyle Pitts is at the moment, he's still young for the position. He's still kind of a unicorn. He's really more of a receiver and deployed more as a receiver than a tight end. And if we see a situation where with Kevin Stefanski now, right, there's a guy that likes tight ends. We saw David Njoku go from dead to unbelievable in that next year. Like, I don't know. To me, the stars are almost, I don't want to say completely aligned, but they're showing alignment. And it's like, I'll say this, the level of investment you'd have to make for Kyle Pitts right now isn't going to break your dynasty team. If he doesn't if it doesn't pan out, it's probably not going to break you down. But if he hits, I don't think this price will ever be reflective of what his value is, right? And he's 25. He's 25. If he has a tight end 2 season again, I can't see. And it's like, okay, now he's definitely found his home, whether it's in Atlanta or he's moving on. I don't think you're looking at a tight end 9 right now on Keep Trade Cut.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I feel like we had this conversation earlier with Fizz because I think Kyle Pitts was his guy, and I've been a Kyle. We made a famous bet on this show that I lost horribly. It was Trey McBride versus Kyle Pitts, and I was on the side of Kyle Pitts. And maybe I'll be right. Maybe I'm just playing the long game. I don't know, because Kyle Pitts, I mean, it is puzzling because he's a young guy, 25 years old. He finishes as the tight end 4 in fantasy points per game, 118 targets. And Atlanta kind of just shuffled the deck or the cards in terms of their pass catchers, because last year they had Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, Kyle Pitts. Obviously, they have Bijan. This year, I guess if you want to throw in like Casey Washington and Kadero Hodge, but I don't know if you need to throw those guys in. This year, they have Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Jahan Dotson, Olamide Zaccheaus. They draft Zachariah Branch, and they have Bijan Robinson. And there's going to be a quarterback thing between Tua and Michael Penix potentially. Penix is probably going to miss at least a part of the beginning of the season because of his injury.
Yep.
But Tua provides some stability at the quarterback spot. My point is, I'm not sure what's standing in the way, and I haven't done my projections for the season yet. Those are coming in later in the month, potentially in June. But I don't see what's standing in the way of Kyle Pitts having 120-ish targets again this year. I mean, I maybe I'm nuts. I don't know. But what do you think, Babbage?
Well, I mean, this is an offensive coordinator who had Shadur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel thrown 40 times.
And Harold Fannin last year broke out.
I don't think – well, Stefanski is one of the quintessential coaches. I'm going to get my playmakers the ball at all costs. I don't care if I'm throwing 3 screens behind behind the line of scrimmage for Harold Fannin Jr. I'm going to figure out a way to get my playmakers the ball. So, yeah, I mean, when you think about it, the worst case scenario, the thing that's holding them back, at least from converting those targets into production, is Tua. But if we can get productive weeks from Shadur Sanders and from Dylan Gabriel, why can't we get it out of Tua? I mean, he's certainly going to a better offensive line. He's going to have Drake London and a very good run game with Bijan keeping him steady. So, and even with Tua, they were getting a lot of game scripts where they were behind, throwing the ball a lot. So I think there's a lot to like about Kyle Pitts and his value. And something I was looking up as you guys were talking about this, 35% of the games that Kyle Pitts played last year resulted in 15 or more PPR fantasy points. Yes, I am rounding a 14.9 performance up to 15. That's close enough. Just to describe the level of upside that you're getting, because I think Adam made a great point with when you consider positional scarcity and value over replacement, a guy who's 25 years old, freak athlete, potentially in a high passing volume offense for multiple years. When you have a guy like that can hit 15 PPR fantasy points at a 35% clip, that's rare. I mean, you're getting maybe 5 tight ends that are started in fantasy football that are hitting 15 plus PPR fantasy points every week.
Right.
And if you can get that level of production with that type of investment, I mean, I have Tucker Kraft, not to transition away too quickly, but I have Tucker Kraft as my guy because I think he's a top 5 tight end who's underpriced right now because of his injury situation. And I think you get more steady production from Tucker Kraft in the long run. There's less risk on, do we know who he is? But it's a little bit more of an expensive play. I think if you're a win now team that needs more solidity and is in a position to make that investment, I'd rather go with Tucker Kraft. But if you're a lean machine that's trying not to give up, leverage too much future capital, maybe you're trying to put yourself over the edge with some upside, but keep yourself stable over a 3-year window, Kyle Pitts is another great solution because even though he's only 2 spots back, much more affordable if you look at the evaluation of those two different players.
Yeah, well said. I'll say last point, just to give a little extra sauce to that too, is that for a guy that was as consistent, right? I mean, obviously everyone at the tight end position has duds. He had a few games where he was not really there, but for as consistent as he was last year, how many 50-point regular PPR? Forget tight end premium for a second. How many players can give you 50 on a week? How many players, like, think about that for a second. Just forget tight end for a second. How many players can drop 50 points in fantasy on the weekly basis? If you check that box and you're in round 7, that's like, it's crazy to me. I don't know.
And young and an athletic freak and
arguably the best tight end prospect again, what do I know?
This is the first real offensive mind that's walked into this organization since
Kevin
he's been drafted.
Stefanski, and let me say as a scorned and just a normal Browns fan, right? I think Kevin Stefanski, what he was in last year to where he's going to, what a great thing for him, right? But this is a guy that, he's 12 personnel guy, loves tight ends. He'll have some other guys that do more of the blocking, but listen, I can promise you that one of the things he was most excited about obviously was Bijan. But getting Kyle Pitts to work with him as a guy who loves using tight ends, oh my gosh, man, it's crazy. And Tua, I get it's unsexy, but what does Tua do? Tua delivers the ball accurately. He's not a guy pushing the ball downfield. What if Kyle Pitts' volume and just consistent ability to catch the football is going up? We've seen Tua actually support some fantasy relevant players in a big way before. So it's not like it's not exciting. There you go.
All right, Babbage, you talked about Tucker Kraft. Give us the Tucker Kraft spiel. Let's stick with tight ends.
All right, I already kind of covered a lot of it, so I won't stick to it much longer because a lot of the argument really is the same. It's just a little bit more of an expensive asset, but I think Tucker Kraft is a teetering top 3 tight end. I think Colston Loveland is going to make a very good argument for himself being 3 this season. They're neck and neck in my opinion. Anytime, and I don't know how executable this is in real leagues, but when I see Harold Fannin valued higher than Tucker Kraft, I got to stop a minute and say to myself, what are we doing here? Like, there's a buy opportunity here. I like Harold Fannin a lot, but this team, we can't pretend that this team makeup isn't going to change with Kevin Stefanski out of the door. Things are going to be different in Cleveland, and a new organization coming in, maybe they don't prioritize getting Harold Fannin the ball in the same ways. It's a level of uncertainty that with his type of prospect where he's not going to win downfield like Kyle Pitts, like Tucker Kraft, like a lot of these other explosive tight ends can. He's living around the line of scrimmage. He's more manufactured touches. And I worry he turns more into an Isaiah Likely, somebody who has the ability to make some of these explosive plays, but isn't getting a lot of target volume. I think you're getting a really solidified asset in Tucker Kraft, and you're getting an injury discount where if Tucker Kraft, with how he plays the game of football, if he can stay healthy longevity within his career, we're seeing this type of ACL injury is becoming less and less detrimental to people's careers. We got Kittle playing into his 30s. We got Kelsey playing into his 30s. You can get a lot of years, and this goes for Kyle Pitts too. If he can figure it out and become a real guy, is you can get 6, 7, 8 if you're lucky. Years of relative production out of these guys. Kittle is still a decent win now asset. If he didn't, tear his Achilles, it's probably not going to be his year this year. But the age curve for tight ends is so much more different, where if we have a wide receiver who's going to be 26 years old and hasn't really quite proven it yet, on the rare cases, it's time. It's over. Very rarely do you get a Michael Wilson who pops off as a 26-year-old third-year player, and you think to yourself, well, we might actually have something here. So when you look at his efficiency metrics, the way he opens up the Green Bay offense, his share of not only the targets, but the red zone targets in that offense, he's just an absolute monster.
Yeah, I will say too, You brought up like he's a little more expensive, but what we saw last year, right? And you talked about Kittle, right? I don't think sometimes for the tight end position, a lot of times the way I play in Dynasty in a lot of leagues, unless the premium gets crazy, I don't tend to, spend a lot of time on it because I'd rather be boom or bust, frankly. I don't want to have a lot of Dynasty value there. But if I'm going to do that, what doesn't get talked enough about is that the snap share. And Tucker Kraft can do it all. He plays basically the entire time. And you like the contrast, stark difference with Harold Fannin, who had a great year. I like him a lot. But what did they just do? They changed literally offensive minds and coordinators, right? And he's the head coach of Monken. And what did they do? They drafted receiver and more competition. Now, you could look at Green Bay and say, well, they drafted a receiver too, but Golden hasn't done anything. The Green Bay offense, as far as pass catchers, has been, honestly, it feels like for almost as long as I've been talking about this game. I mean, it's been that long, that many years. It's like we don't know who it's going to be. We keep trying to figure out who the wide receiver one's going to be. Tucker Kraft is going to be on the field and going to get and shown. Like last year, he had high upside, but was about as consistent as you could get. So he to me is like you brought up George Kittle. I think a George Kittle career arc for him is one to definitely look at. So I think for me, if I was buying him, is like how high or low is the manager? If I can sense that the manager is willing to make a deal, I think it makes sense for sure. He's someone that's probably, depending on my league, but I feel like should be truly more in that elite tier, frankly.
Yeah, I honestly, if we're gonna have Harold Fannin, because Harold Fannin right now is ranked ahead of both of these guys, and I'll just be honest with you, I would prefer Kyle Pitts and Tucker Kraft over Harold Fannin. So if I can get a little something on top of that for Harold Fannin, because Harold Fannin, don't forget, they drafted 2 wide receivers too for that offense. So it's going to be a little bit more crowded. Not probably going to be a good offense right off the start with
slow-paced offensive scheme versus one of the fastest-paced offensive schemes in the league.
Yep. So that I love both of these options at tight end. And since Adam's here, I'm kind of pivoting a little bit from what I wrote down on the show sheet. I'll get back to the original maybe at some point, but
all right, now I'm intrigued.
I think I have to make the case for Rome Odunze being, and not just because I'm a Bears fan, but Rome Odunze. We all know that DJ Moore's moved on to Buffalo, right? And it's going to be up to a combination of Colston Loveland, Luther Burden's the hot name right now, and Rome Odunze to fill the void. And I guess if you want to count Khalif Raymond, Jade Walker, Xavier Thomas, those are all guys that are there. You know, they added Khalif Raymond, drafted Xavier Thomas, although Xavier Thomas is probably going to be more of a special teamer. Last season, DJ Moore accounted for 85 targets, 50 receptions, 682 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. And I think it's worth noting, and I don't think many people realize this, it was Rome Odunze who actually led the Bears in targets last year with 90, and he played in just 12 games.
And how many of those was he actually healthy?
Exactly. It's a great point, Adam. I love that you said that. So let's just play a game, and let's do the thing that both annoys me and fascinates me at the same time. Let's extrapolate that out to a full 17-game season. That's 127 and a half targets. And I know you can't have a half of a target, but that's what the math says, okay? Mm-hmm. And throw in the fact that DJ Moore's gone now, and that 127 number, assuming he stays healthy for the full year, could get closer to elite range. And we know Rome Odunze was a player drafted in an elite range in the top 10 of the NFL draft. So I'm going to make the case that the player who is most likely going to pick up the slack for DJ Moore is going to be Rome Odunze, and somehow Rome Odunze is cheaper than Luther Burden. I mean, I love Luther Burden. I think he's an electric playmaker. I like Colston Loveland a lot. He's a tight end. Rome Odunze has the most upside out of either one of those players. He has the most upside at the Bears pass catcher position. And this is also Bears defense. Knowing the Bears as well as I do is an advantage for fantasy, I think. They ranked number 29 in total yards allowed last year, number 23 in total points allowed per game, and Ben Johnson went crazy in the NFL draft and just drafted offense aside from their first-round pick. That was a safety. And as a Bears fan, I know that was one of their biggest problems was edge rusher. And they added exactly 0 edge rushers in NFL in the free agency period and the NFL draft. So this likely means that the Bears defense is not going to be able to get to the quarterback, meaning they're not going to be good this year again. So what does that mean for fantasy? It's a fantasy wet dream. Fantasy football wet dream. I should add that on because a fantasy wet dream could be a lot of things. Anyway, so the Bears are likely going to be a team that gives up a lot of points. They're likely going to need to keep their pedal to the metal. This is going to be year 2, just year 2 with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. I think the ceiling's the roof for Rome Odunze, but what do you guys think?
Man, you want me to go or Matt? You got something?
I'll take it. Since I guess I'm going to agree with Seth, so I guess it's
agreement.
Nice that we're going back to back.
Well, I mean,
I do think he has the most upside here. I think one of the things I love about Rome is his red zone role within Chicago. He got 25% of the red zone targets last year, which was 13th among receivers. And when you look at the efficiency of turning that into touchdowns, to start the year, he was a touchdown monster. He had 5 touchdowns through 4 games to start the year. And then from weeks 18 through the rest of the season, including playoffs, he had, doing mental math here, 2, 4, 6, 7 red zone targets to only 1 touchdown. Whereas before he had 5 red zone targets to 5 touchdowns. So that he has that type of profile and opportunity within that offense to where we could see an outlier year of touchdown efficiency simply from the type of role he has, getting downfield looks, being explosive, while also having that red zone role and an offense that we expect to continue to score points. And like Seth said, with the defense that's going to be playing from behind, I do like Luther Burden a lot, but I am hesitant to think that he is suddenly going to be the one that takes over as the dominant force of this offense. My actual biggest concern is, does Luther Burden carve out enough between him and Colston Loveland to keep him at a 25 to 6% target share? Because a 24% target share again, like he had last year, 18th, he's going to need a incredibly efficient scoring production off of that target share to be in the elite tier of receivers that we think he can be. So he's got to grow that role. And the biggest question to me is, how much do Luther Burden and Colston Loveland end up eating into that together?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, here's what I will say. Those are a lot of very valid points and good thought exercises too, right? I will say, in an offense that is, as Seth described, a fantasy football wet dream, Ben Johnson with this offense, if you give him more weapons, I think it actually benefits, as crazy as it is to say, it benefits great players. And what I mean by that is, if you look at Rome coming out, listen, I felt like, maybe I shouldn't say I was one of the only ones, but I put a huge 26-minute video on Rome Odunze going into last year and why I thought he was a screaming buy. Going into that year, we had so much change over there, but a lot of teams I think were respecting DJ Moore as the one, and Rome was still, he needed to prove it. They came out, Ben Johnson says, listen, Rome Odunze is our alpha and our X out the gate, right? So we had that already on paper. We saw how he performed there. You brought up the touchdowns, but he was getting targeted like crazy before the bye, week 4, or the first 4 weeks before the bye. What we'll see if you look at the game logs, I'm pretty sure, I should pull it up, but there was a game, he hurt his foot in late October is really all we know as far as the injury reports. There was a game at the very start of November where he had only 3 targets, no production. And if you look from that game on to the rest of the season, there's a lot of differences, like snap share, targets, and certainly production. And we know that Cleveland game was insane. The guy everyone had him in their lineup before they even knew 5 minutes before the game starts. Hey, he re-aggravated this. And that game versus Cleveland. I would just make the case. I know it's another small sample size and these can be dicey, but if you're telling me Ben Johnson led offense with Caleb Williams, who's emerged again as a better passer going into this year for him, if we think he's possibly the alpha, I mean, there's no way this is appropriately valued. And if we think that he was hurt throughout this year, which we know he was, and the part where we can say he was healthy was like wide receiver 12-ish, I mean, listen, it's worth the risk, I think, is the other reality of it, right? Rome, I wasn't sure where he would be in value. I think he's worth the risk. And I do think there's enough doubters or non-believers to where you can actually you can strike a good deal for Rome Odunze where you don't have to pay out the nose.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Rome Odunze, not only was he featured in the schedule release video, but he dressed up as Bob Ross, which is next level.
Next level.
I mean, if that's not a sign that he's going to break out and finish as like the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy, I don't know what is.
Well,
so.
and I'll say this too. There is risk here, okay? But let me give you a couple things to think about. One, from a prospect standpoint, we know this guy is one of the truly elite ones. If you anybody that really does prospect evaluation will tell you they had him in the S tier. Like, go to Player Profiler and you'll see he's best comparable to Justin Jefferson. Like, we know he's a great prospect. We've seen him do it in moments. I look at last year too, and for a guy that was hobbling around at points, the one thing that's so crazy is last year, I made this point about his rookie season. Did you know last year he was number 6 again in unrealized air yards? 805. The year prior, he was at 900 and some unrealized air yards. You brought up touchdowns, Matt, and he has touchdown upside, I believe, because of his size and his utilization. But he also gets a ton of deep targets, which is why you get so many unrealized air yards in both of those years. He's getting thrown the ball in the red zone all the time and downfield. Listen, if it doesn't happen this year, if it doesn't happen this year and he's healthy, I would be absolutely floored and shocked.
Me too. All right, Adam, who's your next player?
Damn. Well, let me give you a stark contrast, but similar position. We'll keep it on theme here. A.J. Brown is one for me. I think you talked about Rome Odunze and the Luther. One of the things you talked about Harold Fannin too, Matt. Right now, and we've seen this for a while in Dynasty, where people want to go by what the sexy, like someone that has produced and shown well, but the upside they feel like is just insane. So Rome Odunze's shown enough, non-promising games or whatever to not fit that bill. A.J. Brown is the quintessential, like, oh, he's not. A.J. Brown's done. He's washed. But for what we know, A.J. Brown basically is going to go into a situation where he's going to play with a great quarterback. We've seen him be an alpha target earner. And I will say for me, obviously this is a contender only. I wouldn't probably buy him as a rebuilder unless it's just dirt cheap. Like, it just makes too much sense. It's a complete steal. But I'm okay on a lot of my teams purchasing at a reasonable price. Like, A.J. Brown right now isn't necessarily universally just going to have to cost you a generic first. But if he's costing me players that are in the projection range, if I can get deals like that done, I'm okay going and pivoting to, hey, this is a 1 or 2 year deal. Like, I know I'm having a short-term purchase here, and I'm okay with that. I don't have to build my team all around the Luther Burdens, the Harold Fannins, the guys that are like, we're trying to shoot for the moon. A.J. Brown, though, has also shown that I think for another 1 or 2 years, and production-wise, he can shoot for the moon. So I think I'll say this. When the trade is official and all that, like, I don't know that there's a big bump in movement, but once we get into the season, and if he has a very good game, which I'd imagine pretty early on he will, you will see the price change at that point. So I can also tell you, outside of something horrific as an injury, he does actually have some value almost baked into coming once we get to the part of the season in September.
Yeah, I like that call quite a bit, especially for, a contending team, because this is exactly what New England needs. And I'm sure you, Matt, as a Patriots fan, know that this is exactly what they need. Romeo Doubs is a okay signing, but they need a true number one. And if you get that true number one wide receiver, a lot of other things can slot into place. So, Babbage, how do you feel about this?
Quickly on Dobbs, I actually think given his role and what was available in the free agency market, I kind of like getting like a wide receiver 3 that can just be reliable and catch the ball. But I love the value on AJ Brown connected to a much better, no shade to Jalen Hurts. I think he gets a lot more. I think he gets a lot more hate than he deserves to at times. But
Absolutely.
Drake May, I think, is if he's not exactly right now, he will become, a better passer than Jalen Hurts. I think as a deep ball passer, he's already getting there. But giving him an explosive asset is going to be a game changer for this offense. AJ Brown's going to get a disgusting amount of targets. He's going to be in an offense that I think is going to be less reliant on the run, passing more, which is going to be beneficial to him overall. And at 29 years old, AJ Brown is the type of guy where I trust him to be competing again and be that value next year as well. So for a contender, this is the right time to do it. I mean, I think even though we know, or at least strongly believe he's going to New England on June 1st, I still think his value is going to go up as soon as that actually materializes. So he doesn't even have to play a game in New England. He doesn't have to even pick out his apartment in Foxborough. His value is going to go up just from the trade news.
Yeah, he'll get a quote unquote artificial bump in value. Can I say this is something, as someone that gets a lot of questions on Dynasty and people ask, like, they send me their link of their team, right? So I kind of have an idea, and they keep asking me, why do we continue to do that as a collective? Why do we continue to, like, he's in the news, I got to go? We have too much time on our hands sometimes in the dead period. Like, it's just crazy. We've known he's going to go there for like a month, but you're not wrong. It's I don't know. I don't know what to say about it, but I just had to talk about how that's crazy. Like, we know people will do that. Why are we wired this way?
Because
it's weird. There's just
crazy
always that back of your
players, I
head,
guess.
like if it doesn't happen, or like even
Yeah.
with Rashee Wright, like or Quinshon Judkins, when that happens, everyone's first instinct is to react immediately, and I think that's the world that, not to get on this soapbox, but social media has probably curated over the years. Everything is so fast, and everything's about getting an instant reaction out of everything.
Yeah.
And that's clearly, and I think those who have been able to resist that are the ones typically taking advantage in Dynasty.
I would agree. I will say, actually, as you're talking through that, I was just thinking about it a little more, like zoomed out lens. I actually feel like your assessment there is even more correct, because this has been, frankly, like the most negative and dead the off season has been, because of the class hate, right? The rookie class hate. So the I guess, what would you say, the thirst for something like this is almost even stronger. So even though we've known it's coming, people will probably be blowing you up. All right, AJ Brown's officially in New England, and we're getting closer to, right, playing games. So I'm with you, actually. I really was thinking it would be more like you see the value really get closer towards the season, but I think you're right. I think you'll just start to see the arrow go up a little bit sharper come the trade. Good call.
And one final point on AJ Brown, and I think most people were kind of disappointed. That's my general feeling with his production last year in that Eagles offense. But I just want to point out the last 3 seasons, every single year he's had 7 touchdowns, and he's finished no lower than wide receiver 12 in fantasy points per game. And the most games he's missed was 2024. He missed 4 games. He missed 2 games last year. So he's been pretty much, like, aside from a few injuries, he's been pretty healthy, or he's been available more times than not. It's not like he's missing an entire season with an injury. So I think he's been pretty reliable, and I think you can take advantage of people having sour grapes when maybe they shouldn't have sour grapes at wide receiver 10 in fantasy points per game finish.
I know we got other people to talk about, so I don't want to make this go longer than it needs to, but he's been playing. He's also played, right, on 2 notoriously not pass happy teams, right, in his career. You made this point already, Matt, but I'm thinking about this from a standpoint of, like, there's a chance, and if you look at AJ Brown's targets, right, even disappointing last year, it's like 130. He's like walking to 130 healthy, right? If you look the 2 years prior to that, let's see, 158 and 145. And what if there's a chance that he has the opportunity to earn the most targets he's ever had, given the way that they may pass the ball? I mean, goodness.
Babbage, who you got next?
All right, I'll go quickly here. I like this for more contending teams. If you're trying to close out your rebuild and go into your win now phase, I can see this as well, just because the cost is really cheap right now. I hate it, but Kyler Murray. And I have a working theory that if Kyler Murray had his way, he would have been out in Arizona much earlier, but he knew that he was in a situation that he couldn't get out of. He was in a contract that no one was going to trade for. And again, I don't know any of this. We've never heard Kyler ask out, at any point throughout this process, but it became clear that there was just this negative aura around him. And I almost hate using that phrase, but just sulky and not great. And that it's not, doesn't really say much about his leadership, but he's going to go into Kevin O'Connell in a better offense with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Juwan Jennings now, TJ Hawkinson. And he's probably going to be the starting quarterback. I think he's better than JJ McCarthy right now. I think he gives Kevin O'Connell more to work with. And even in his absolute worst season, 16 fantasy points per game, 2.5, 16.2, 2.5 higher than JJ McCarthy. The rushing upside isn't what it used to be, but it's still going to be something that's there for the foreseeable future. And I think potentially in a more dynamic offense, maybe he gets more out of that. Maybe Kevin O'Connell is able to, draw up some friendlier schemes that are more conducive to that. The design runs have gone down, down, down. So whether that's a trend based on his age or that was a scheme choice within Arizona, that is something we'll find out this year. But the upside is pretty palpable. Quarterback 24. I mean, in a super flex league, you can do a lot worse than taking a shot on a guy who could be the starting quarterback all year for Kevin O'Connell. And not to say he's going to be that next Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold person who just resurges out of nowhere, but we've seen it happen before. I think in a super flex league in particular, it's worth taking a shot on somebody who could potentially get a few more years of borderline QB1 play.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot here to try to unpack. I'll just give you a few things here. One, Kyler, some of the stuff that you hear about is just nonsense or not really needed. It's just funny. But I thought it was actually really interesting when he got his contract. So he was a rookie 2019, 2022. Contract for the big one kicks in. By the way, he got, I think it was $250 almost, whatever, a huge amount of money, right? So he went from the number one pick, small quarterback, people doubted him, to in prominence. And then expectations change everything. But he didn't want, remember the whole video games and all that was in there? And this is a guy that really didn't take accountability, right? And I can say for someone that has definitely in my past looked at not taking accountability, that was clearly there. I do think when the expectations get really high, if you don't deliver, and that was what Arizona's been. They've been one of the most losing franchises ever. But people forget about that he brought them to prominence, and they were one of the most electrifying teams when he was there with Nuke Hopkins. This is a guy that also, he gets categorized as a potential, a Konami guy runner. This is not a guy that's just a Konami threat only. He's actually a lot more accurate, I think, than people want to give him credit for. Now, he's had, his leadership and the intangibles. There's a lot of questions there. But let's just think about the Vikings. You brought up the play call, not just the play caller, Kevin O'Connell, but you got all the receivers. Look at what's crazy when no matter who it's been outside of JJ McCarthy, 2023 they had the injury to Kirk Cousins, right? And they keep trotting quarterbacks out there. They were the number one team in passing yards, despite having 4 or 5 starters. This offense, outside of JJ McCarthy's horrific year last year, under O'Connell, it just spits out huge amounts of passing volume. And I'll say this, when he stopped running, it's like Arizona paid the guy. That's now our franchise quarterback. We don't want to necessarily risk getting hurt. You know what the Vikings have him on? a 1-year, $3 million deal. So you now have, I'm trying to set the stage for this. You got a guy with the Vikings have no future commitment to. They don't have a problem trying to design plays to run him, I'm sure. You have a guy who now has seen the highs and the lows and has to go prove it now, right? And he is in a great situation to do so. So if he's willing and able to take some leadership and learning from a guy that has done a great job here, the upside's unmatched, honestly. I really believe that. You could be looking at, if things play out right, the future quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, attached to still Justin Jefferson, one of the best wide receivers in the game, and a guy that could still be a dual threat guy. I don't think Kyler suddenly still is not bursty and can't run the football all the time. I really don't believe that. And I think he's still, if he's willing to take and rise to the challenge, he's still talented as hell, man. I really believe that. So I think this bet honestly is prudent, frankly. Like, I really believe it. It's worth betting on. Like, if it doesn't pan out, we know it could blow up. But if it hits, I believe he's closer to top 10 than he's currently priced by a lot.
Yeah, I mean, just look at his track record. I know some of it's in the distant past, but you're looking at quarterback 3, quarterback 4, quarterback 7, quarterback 12 in 2024 in fantasy points per game. In this offense, I mean, you touched on it. It's awesome, or at least the pieces are awesome, and the play caller's awesome. And they added Juwan Jennings to the wide receiver room, which is, the cherry on top of what's already Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. So it's a great environment, and this is going to be the true test for him. I think the upside is worth the risk. I agree with you guys. I'm going to throw out my second player, and it might be controversial. It might spark some conversation, but I'm going to throw out Kenneth Walker. And I know it's kind of a buy high situation, but just let me do this for a second.
I'm going to hear you out. I want to hear this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we got a taste of what Kenneth Walker could be when Zach Charbonnet went down. I know this is going to be a short sample size, but in the playoffs, and I think people didn't really pay attention because it didn't really affect them in fantasy unless you play like in a playoff league, but this is kind of crazy. He averaged in the playoffs 21.7 rush attempts, 3 receptions, 139 scrimmage yards, and 1.3 touchdowns per game. And if we compare that to the regular season, he averaged 13 carries a game, 1.8 receptions per game, 77.3 scrimmage yards per game, and less than half a touchdown per game, 5 touchdowns total. And a lot of that was because the Seattle Seahawks, and Babbage and I talked about it. I pretty much, I don't know if we brought it up every episode, but we brought it up frequently. Why aren't the Seahawks using Kenneth Walker in the red zone on the goal line more? And I'm going to get to that here in a minute, but Kenneth Walker won the Super Bowl MVP, and he's the 4th guy, if you care to know. He's the 4th Super Bowl MVP that has signed with another team the following season. And I find that strange. And I think Kansas City's really getting just a gift here because they desperately needed some juice in the running game. And their offensive line's good. It's number 10 overall, and they got rid of the worst part of it in Jawan Taylor. He was a huge disappointment. He was 80th out of 88 qualified tackles, according to PFF. He was second to last in run blocking grade, so he was a horrible run blocker. And they replaced him with Jalen Moore. So they replaced Juwan Taylor with Jalen Moore, who graded out much better. So the offensive line theoretically should be better than Seattle's offensive line was last year. And the Chiefs' top 2 rushers from a year ago, Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, they're gone. That's 281 carries, 51 targets, 37 receptions vacated from the running back position. And the Chiefs, if you look behind Kenneth Walker, sure, they drafted Emmett Johnson. They signed Amari DiMercado. They still have Brashard Smith, but that's it. And Kenneth Walker is going to get the opportunity, I think, that he's deserved all along, because last season, according to fantasy points data, minimum of 50 rushing attempts, he was number 3 in explosive run rate, and he was number 1 in missed tackles forced, ahead of Bijan Robinson in that category. And here's the weirdest part. I said at the beginning that Seattle just refused to give him the ball near the goal line. Walker ranked 48th out of 65 qualified running backs, minimum 50 carries, in carries inside the 5-yard line. 27.6% of the team's carries inside the 5-yard line went to Kenneth Walker. A good majority of them went to Zach Charbonnet. That's clearly who they preferred. And that percentage is going to go up significantly in Kansas City because there's nobody else that profiles as a goal line running back. I mean, I suppose they could give that to Amari DiMercato, but Emmett,
come on.
Emmett, it's not. Yeah, it's Kenneth Walker is clearly the most qualified, and I think he's going to get 300 plus touches easily, and I think he's going to be a double-digit touchdown player, and I think he has the upside to finish as the RB1 in fantasy, and if he does that, his value is going to skyrocket, and he's one of those players. I thought his value would go up even more than it did, but it didn't. Like, I mean, it did, but it didn't go up like how I thought it would. He's RB10, 47th overall, right next to Breece Hall, who's in a horrible situation right now. Trevion Henderson, Ramondre Stevenson's there, and the Patriots like him. So I just think that the runway is clear for him to just absolutely smash, and I think we're kind of overthinking this. And this is something the Chiefs have needed for years now, and they have it. So what do you guys think?
Sorry, I was muted. I will tell you, it's interesting. I'm young enough to remember the days when Kenneth Walker was ranked the running back 1 in his rookie season when he had his coming out party. Now, listen, the running back position, right? We know it ages kind of like milk, and to be frank, but he has not. And I'll say this: that you talked about the Chiefs, obviously a lot, but remember the Chiefs with Andy Reid and this regime, they drafted CEH, right? They took a luxury pick on a running back that just frankly, remember, people forget this too. Remember week 1 of Clyde Edwards-Helaire? People thought they were celebrating. They thought it was over. This is the crowned. This is the guy. They found their running back. Well, they did. He just wasn't that great, So,
yeah, he was going number 1 overall in some of those high stakes fantasy leagues because you get the look ahead game or whatever. I'm not an expert in high stakes fantasy, but yeah, it was crazy.
It was. But all that to say, right? They found a gem in Pacheco. If you go and look at Pacheco, I'm drawing a blank. They had a running back. Number 1. Jerick McKinnon, that was getting a ton of pass catching work, if you remember, right? And he was the passing down back. He gets hurt. Pacheco for that second half of the year was like 5th in targets for the running back position from those games on when he was playing that way. If Kenneth Walker, he to me has always been in the conversation for one of the best in between the tackles running backs. If he's going to get any type of opportunity, it doesn't even have to be a third down situation where Patrick Mahomes, you know how he scrambles and makes plays happen, and he can get the ball to Kenneth Walker in the passing game. The key to his upside going to and actually actualizing his running back 1 is if there's any type of passing upside. You already talked about how the red zone work should just naturally fall in line. If he gets even top 10 range of targets at the position, we're not being honest about his upside. So it's hard to say buy because he's gone up so much in value, but he probably is one of the few running backs that has win your league type of upside, frankly.
Babbage.
Fully agree there. Fully agree. It could be hard to stomach that cost sometimes when you're looking down the barrel of a 26-year-old RB10 and paying that price, but if you're in your win now window, this is a move that can turn you into the juggernaut in your league over the next 3 years.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You should, if you do it right, you should be thinking about it as a win now 2 to 3 year window, right? And take the upside that comes with it.
Yep, that's what I was going to say too. I do acknowledge he's 25 years old. So we have a couple of elite seasons, maybe 3 if we're lucky from Kenneth Walker. But yeah, I think the upside is massive. Let's go rapid fire. I know sometimes we do rapid fire and then it turns into the longest segment that we do. So that's kind of a running gag here. But is there one other guy, Adam, that you can give us a quick pitch, an elevator pitch on?
Yeah, let me give you one. Well, it was my most recent Dynasty trade. And I'll say this. This has asterisk, right? I wouldn't say Jayden Daniels you should be buying him in every league. He's too expensive still, right? But I do think if we're talking super flex, which I am at the moment, recency bias is a funny thing. And most of last year was injury, and the whole thing was terrible, right, for the offense in general. If you go back and look at his rookie season, he's just one of the few guys that came in so poised, so unbelievable from a production standpoint, one of the few Konami rushers. And he's dipped in price enough to where, like, if you rewind a year ago, you say, Jayden Daniels is like the guy to build around, right? He's gone down enough in price to where you've got to kick the tires on it, I believe. You got to just kick the tires on it. See what the price is, because I got him I was able to trade away Jackson Dart, Brandon Ayuk, and a second, right, to go from Jackson Dart to Jayden Daniels. So my point is, you got to kick the tires on this, because it comes down to the manager. How much do they really believe in Jayden Daniels? And then also, what's their team? Like this manager didn't have a lot of depth and was trying to figure out how to get more. So I just think he's a kind of a situational. Let me say that. He's a situational purchase, but every single situation you should be checking.
Love it. Babbage, you got an elevator pitch for us?
Yeah, lower value guy, but Ricky Pearsall. I think there's a ton of upside in that offense. Juwan Jennings leaves, but in comes Mike Evans. And yeah, that's some competition, but we're not talking about 24-year-old Mike Evans out in Tampa Bay. We are talking about 30-year-old Mike Evans, who's coming off of, some injuries. Ricky Pearsall got shot in the chest going into year one, slowed him down, had some injuries, last year that, struggled to stay healthy, as did a lot of San Francisco 49ers. But when he can, in both of those first 2 years, whenever he got into a rhythm, he showed a lot of really good playmaking ability. He runs really good routes. He has the ability to earn deep targets and make those explosive plays in that Kyle Shanahan offense. And we're going to be missing George Kittle for the first part of the season. So I think if Ricky Pearsall can really get into a groove and stay healthy this year, we're looking at a guy who's valued closer. I can't remember exactly where, but like beyond wide receiver 35. And we're looking at a guy who could finish as a top 24 wide receiver.
Yeah, I like that. I think the biggest concern is injury, but if he stays healthy, he should have all the targets he wants in that offense, assuming George Kittle is going to be out for an extended period of time. I'm going to give the elevator pitch for Saquon Barkley, contenders only, unless he's just ridiculously cheap. I think this Eagles offense with a different play caller and Sean Mannion is going to be better. The Eagles, they want to run the football. Saquon Barkley's been top 5 in opportunity share over the past 2 seasons at the running back position. The offensive line's still good. It's PFF ranked them number 7 at the end of the season. And there's a reason why Saquon Barkley wasn't good this year. It's because, and this is crazy, he had, between the regular season and the playoffs, when they rode him to the Super Bowl, he touched the ball 482 times. And that's insane to me. So this year, I think he's going to be better rested, more healthy. I think he's going to be back to more of the, not quite the 2024, 2025 version of Saquon Barkley, but I think we're going to see him closer to that version than we saw last year, because I just trust Saquon Barkley to take good care of himself. And I think the Eagles are going to need him more than ever, especially if they trade A.J. Brown. And I'll just real briefly, I think also that Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston, Kenyon Sadiq, Omar Cooper Jr., all these rookies that got saddled with bad landing spot, I think are perfect trade targets for rebuilding teams, because I think, A, they're going to be acquirable. And I think that these situations, and I know the Jets have sucked forever and the Browns have sucked forever, but either one of two things has to be true this year, I think. Either the team surprises people which means that likely their young rookie players are good. Kenyon, Sadiq, Omar Cooper Jr. for the Jets, Concepcion, Denzel, Boston make an impact for the Browns, or more likely, they're bad. And then both of these teams are picking at the top of the draft with a good quarterback class, which means that the situation will improve. And I think that these are going to be players that hold their value over time. And again, I don't think that they're going to be very expensive at all. And I think if you're a rebuilding team, I think all of those players, even though it feels gross, I think it's a good process move because the price is right. And I like I said, I think they're going to hold their value. And I think the situation, well, it can't get any worse, right? And I think it is going to get better next year, more likely than not. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for us. Adam, tell the people where they can find your work.
I will real quickly. I know elevator pitch, but OC chain. Kellen Moore to Patullo for Saquon Barkley is, if you don't know about it, go look it up and you'll know all you need to know. They have a new OC, not like Rashee Rice, but somebody got in the way of Saquon's success last year. So you can find me at South Harmon, South Harmon FF. If you go to South Harmon Dynasty on YouTube, that's where I'm doing the majority of my work at this point. I will say it's not any active videos on there, but within the week here before May's over, at ATM Dynasty, you'll be seeing my own personal brand channel. Some new videos that are coming out there. But I appreciate you guys having me on, man. It was a good discussion. And as always, enjoy kicking it with Seth and Matt. It was really nice to meet you, man.
Yeah. Is that a channel that's live right now? Or is that something we should be on the lookout for?
It's technically live. There's no videos. It's ready to go, okay. But I have videos coming out within the week. So that's where you can
I will link it. I'll link it in our description here. So if you throw me the link, or I can find it probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that'll be in the description. Go follow Adam. He's one of the sharpest dynasty minds in the business. Do you have a Twitter handle, or do you care if people follow you on Twitter?
Absolutely.
Go for the Twitter.
No. ATM 4D Chess. You may not know, my first podcast, Mike Crystal and I, who formed South Harmon, did, that was for Destination Debbie at the time, was called 4D Chess. So I could still pay homage to that with that.
Nice. Matt Babich, you know what time it is, right? Do you have any
words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom for the people.
Yeah, I think I may have lost all my wisdom over the week of vacation, but I'll say, since I just got back from vacation, take some time every day to spend outside of screens. Just figure out something, whether it's doing the dishes, going on a walk, something with no screens involved, and do something to keep your brain sharp. If you're scrolling through social media, turn it off, play a game, puzzle, cook up some dynasty trades, think about some game theory within your leagues, anything that, keeps your brain active, get some sunshine, all these things for self-help. And you'd be shocked, how quickly you can get out of a little rut.
I love it. Adam, do you have any words of wisdom for us? I don't know, like, no pressure if you don't. But
no, I think impromptu for me on this. I've always felt like I can, but I'm in a good place too right now. I think so. I'll just tell you, for me, getting an opportunity where my grandparents are getting really old. They should already be in a nursing home, but they're in their house still. So I'm over there renovating, but I'm getting to spend time with my grandparents. And I'll say this: I think really take the time to appreciate the loved ones in your life. Like I'm in a unique situation to have them at over 90, right? Yeah. Although you could get irritated about them not being in a home, how much work you have to do. I'm getting to spend some really great time and learn some things about them. And I would say this: spend time with your family to the point of put the phones down. Like, put the phones down and just talk to people, because you don't know what's going to change and how your future is going to change. And I think when you do that, right, basically you start becoming a little more grateful. And for me, that's one of the things I do every morning. I start being grateful for all the stuff in your life, and you be surprised how quickly it will turn around mentally for you. Every morning I go old school, pen and paper, speaking of phone down, write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And if you just do that, I tell you, you'll be shocked at how much harder it is to just get in a foul mood. Because if you can just get in a foul mood or feel bad about all these things, you'll start finding yourself being in a good mood just because. And it's a mindset shift, I think.
I love it. I love it. And I love the words of wisdom, but something I don't love is Aaron Rodgers. And he's signed with the Steelers and he's coming back. I don't know why the Steelers hate their franchise. Like, the path was obvious, right? You start Will Howard, you win one game, maybe zero, maybe two, you get a top draft pick for next year, and then you're rolling, right? But no, Aaron Rodgers, he signs back with the Steelers. He's never going away. Somehow he'll find a way to stick in the NFL even after he's done playing. He's Aaron Rodgers. He's just like the rot we can't get rid of. But anyway,
Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to take the spotlight and come back. Come on.
Yeah. Anyway, it's going to be interesting to see how that Mike McCarthy reunion goes because it wasn't too good at the end there. Anyway.
Yeah, a lot of crazy.
Anyway, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for watching the episode, listening on the podcast. Don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Thank you again to Adam. Go follow him wherever he goes except home. And until next time, be good, everybody, and we will see you later.